I am a little bit later than I'm supposed to be, but I'm still here. So let's get started with the show. I'm only 10 minutes late. Don't judge me that hard. Thank you, Rogers Reef Food, for sponsoring our live streams. I appreciate that you're here week after week, and I'm looking forward to using more of your food in my aquarium. Coral Magazine is the magazine I'm the executive editor of. A lot of people don't seem to know that. It's like a top secret, a deep, dark secret. But I've been running this magazine for the last 2 years. Yes, I have a boss that tells me stuff, but ultimately I get to pick what goes in every issue, and a lot of legwork goes into these magazines. And I say now, if you have an aquarium, you should be a subscriber to this magazine to enjoy the wonderful content that we put out every 2 months. I offer one-on-one consultation. I've helped a lot of people. All I do is get on a video chat with you for about an hour, and we discuss what's going on with your tank, and I help you figure out solutions. I help you analyze ICP analysis and all kinds of other things. And sometimes I just see something weird, like, hey, why is it like that? And it solves another problem. So anyway, if you need consultation help, I am here. Reach out to me at sales@milosreef.com. And if we end up talking longer than an hour, that's okay. And what's really funny is sometimes people will say, oh my God, it's like I'm on the live stream. Like, yes, I'm talking directly to you. And I'm sitting in this chair when I do it. So it feels like the live stream. Okay, so I've got some information for you. But before I get into the stuff about the Reef Reset, I have to cover a couple things. Number one, next weekend there's no live stream because I will be in Las Vegas gambling away all my money. No, I'm giving my presentation on how to move an aquarium. And I'll be giving that at the Las Vegas Reef Stock. So if you are still on the fence about going, come hang out with us and have a lot of fun. The crocodiles behind me, they are still swimming around, doing well. I haven't seen a single carcass. I'm going to assume I still have 59 of them in there. Let's see if I can scoot out of the way a little bit. I don't know if you can tell, but they're swimming around back there. And the tank's dirty. I got to fix that. But you see that little light that's been sitting on the tank now for over a month. Let's see, that tank was set up on the 5th of August. Today is September 20th. 45 days? Is that about right mathematically? That might be wrong. It sounds about right. So in the meantime, because I am a aquarium hoarder, and that's as far as it goes to hoarding, I was looking at a box. And I said, I know what's in that box. This solves another problem for me. So I'm going to tell you the story about this box. So here is the box. Just looks like the average kind of box you'd get from China, right? And inside the box is a very old but never used light fixture that I got in a raffle a long time ago. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Aquarium Village before, but here's a story and then I'll show you more about the light. I'm going to put this down here next to Jack. Yeah, you can smell it, Jackie. Okay, so what happened was I'm at the event. I was speaking to the club. It was the Long Island Reefers Association, or LIRA. And then they said, it's time for the raffle, everyone. Everyone come with us. So I followed them in, and I didn't have any cash on me to buy some tickets. And I was like, nah. And one nice, kind, gentle-hearted lady said, hey, Mark, do you need money for the raffle? I'm like, is there just an ATM I can go to? And she's like, don't worry about it. Here's $20. And I said, well, look, as soon as this is over, we'll go to the ATM. I'll reimburse you. And I bought my tickets. And I stuck them in wherever. I don't know if I put them in one thing or in multiple things, but my $20 got 3 of my tickets pulled, which is hilarious. I mean, it's just like, what? I'm the speaker. I'm not really supposed to win the treasure, but it'd be cool to win something, even if it was a test kit for my aquarium when I get home. But I was winning, and I won that light fixture, which I guess at the time was like the grand prize. And everyone's like, ah. And I was just like, sorry. And then I pointed to that lady and I said, it's all her fault. She's the one that made me buy these tickets. So, and then I reimbursed her. So that is how I got this light fixture. Now, I want to show you something funny that was in the box. Because with me, every story is true. Here are my raffle tickets from back then. These are the winning numbers in case you need. No, I'm kidding. But Office Depot made these tickets, and they were in my Staples. And it was just funny that that was in there. So the way this works, this is a very old school LED light. And it has a single cooling fan on the top. It has, I think, 24 lights on the bottom. Some are white, some are blue. On the back side, you've got two knobs to turn on whatever color spectrum I want, how much brightness I want of white, how much brightness I want of blue. And then this really weird plug right here. Can you see that? It's just weird looking, right? And that's the whole fixture. And then there was some screw holes that are missing screws. I'm like, oh, that's weird. I realized what the screw holes were missing for. It's for this deluxe hanging kit. So I would be able to secure this to something, and then I got these clips, and apparently these clips are going to go through those what look like screw holes to me, or probably were screw holes. I don't know. I mean, they literally look like they belong to screws, and I'll be able to snap those in and hang this light fixture. And then the power cord, unlike every light fixture we're used to having, which has a power brick, you've got the 3 prongs, and you've got this weird goofy end. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug this in. I don't know what kind of what this is called, this type of connection, but it just screws on to keep it from falling out. And as soon as I plug it into the wall, the cooling fan starts running even if the light's not on, which I think is kind of funny. I mean, it's probably a feature, right? Not a bug. So I have a handy dandy extension cord here next to me, so this cord would reach for the show today. A 3-prong plug. And now the fan is spinning right here on the top. I don't know if you can see that, but it's spinning. And then I'll just hold this up. It's heavy. God, it feels like 10 pounds. So here is my blue light. Here's my white light. Yes. And here is the combination of both lights together, which kind of looks like what I expect over a reef tank with that blue hue. So I will dial this down to the sweet spot I like, and I'm going to put it over the crocodiles. So I'm going to have to figure out some kind of an apparatus. I don't really want to screw this into the ceiling of my my office area yet, if I don't have to. But that is going to be the light that goes over that tank. And the best part is, well, it cost me $20. I was going to say I got it for free, but I did pay $20. And I've had it 15 years, new in the box. Never had a need for it because it's so small. But over a 10-gallon tank, that light is the perfect size. And the beauty of it is because, you know, I can choose where to put it over the tank. I can set it low initially, and I can raise it up higher if needed to have some clearance beneath it, like if I was trying to grow mangroves, for example, or something interesting like that. So that's kind of cool. And I love that I had it in my pile of aquarium gear that I hoard, and I'm going to put it to use. Never waste anything, right? All right. So that is the end of that story. Take this box, put it over here. All right, let's talk about the Reef Reset, because I put a bunch of slides together for you today. So I started this process once my back started to stop hurting so much. And this is a picture of the tank, I would say roughly a month ago, as it was at the time. The Dry Reef says, are they like real crocodiles? No. I'll go ahead and answer this one really quick. He says, do you have a lot of enemies you're preparing to make peace with? No. So I don't know what the fish are that I'm growing. I grew them from eggs, and crocodiles come from eggs, obviously. And at some point they're going to sprout legs, and then they're going to have big jaws. And, you know, at some point I might end up with, you know, something looks like this behind me. You know, it's just one of those things to be, you know, concerned about. But for now, they're very small, and I don't feel nervous at all. So, the reef itself has been inundated with too many anemones. I'm talking about the small nanonems that I grow. And I've been growing these things for many years, and my reef has 200-300 of them in there. And they're taking up all real estate. They're causing a lot of issues. And I'm going to tell you this, and it sounds a little conspiratorial, but Now when I reach into the tank, my arm is tingling like I'm being stung by potential nematocysts just blowing around in the tank, even though I hadn't actually started doing anything yet. And I think it's because the system is maxed out. It is overloaded, too much bioload. Someone recently asked, I forget, Facebook maybe? And said, or maybe it was Instagram. He said, how do you know when a tank is time for a reef reset? And I explained if the corals have become too big, to where they have nowhere to grow, or have come too far to the surface to where they're dying at the surface and inhibiting flow, and algae's growing on it because there's no room for coral DNA to continue. If it's creating such a mass that there's a big shadow beneath, that everything in the shadow is dying, that's time for a reset. That's at the point you have to do something. And I had meant to do this reset months ago, and I'm not making this an excuse. I'm just telling you what happened in my life. I had scheduled my buddy Dwayne to fly here and help me do the reset. I don't know, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. And oh, that's the mailman. All right, I'll be right back. Let me see if there's a great package. Two packages. So I'm gonna leave off where I was talking about time for a reset, and I explained how I have too many anemones and they're causing chaos. And then I'm gonna show you what's in this box, because this is how I make a living. I should probably change this to this one. Oh, there's even some candy in here. Got a little bag of candy. And an invoice, and some bubble wrap, and more bubble wrap, more so much bubble wrap. And look, I got more Terra Reef in. So here it is right there. This is the powder form. If you are not using this to feed your tank, you can. And I have it in stock again. So this was the large size. I have medium, small, and large. It's a powder form. You just mix it up. This is the perfect commercial. You mix it up with some tank water, let it sit for 5 minutes to activate the bacteria that's within the food, and pour it in your tank with the filtration turned off, and let it go for an hour or so. And then you can turn on your skimmer again or whatever. But why filter out the food you're paying for to put in the tank? Every single night when I feed my reef, I stop the return pump and I put food in the tank, and the fish can go chase it for a maximum of 10 minutes. It's usually gone before that. But then the murky stuff that's still in the aquarium, the liquid, that is still being inhaled by the corals. And then after 10 minutes, the return pump turns on, and the protein skimmer comes on 5 minutes after that. So really, my reef has had 15 minutes to capture all the food it could during the feeding session. You do the same thing with Terra Reef, anytime, day or night. If you want to feed in the middle of the night, you want to feed in the daytime, you mix it up, pour it in the tank, leave your filtration off for a while, and just leave the circulation to move it around. And Bob's your uncle. So, just want to encourage you guys to feed your reef. I'll show you this too, because I got this. This is something fun for me. And I saw the ad on Facebook a while back, and I ignored it. And then I saw it again, and I was like, oh, yeah, well, I got to get this. So, here's my invoice. This has nothing to do with aquariums, but it could. So, let's see. Is there anything else in here? Nope. Okay, that's empty. I'm going to hold it up to show you what I got. These right here. Can you see that? Can you see that? It's getting Jack all riled up. So this one right here is a character from a comic book called Foxtrot. And here you can kind of see the paper a little bit better. And it says, the Jason Fox High Stakes D20. And what I like about the High Stakes D20 is that it has a 20 or a 1. A 20 or a 1. You have a 50-50 chance of total annihilation or total success. And I love that. But then if you're like me and you're risk adverse, you get the other dice. So this one here is called the Jason Fox Lucky D20. And I got this one because every facet of this dice is a 20. And if you roll a 20, you win. So I had to get those for my life. They're right here on my desk. I love them. Will I use them to decide if I want to work in my aquarium? That's a great way of living your life, right? You just let the die decide. I think it's hilarious. Okay, so back to what we're doing here. Let me find where I left off. So I showed you what the tank looked like. I just want you to see this one last time. This is what the tank looked like a month ago. And then I got in there and I started working. First thing I did was turn off the protein skimmer and I turned off the return pump. And I literally set them to off, not like on a timer, because I didn't want to come back on because I knew it'd be in the tank for a while. And then I started reaching in and removing things. And so I'm holding up here this little tiny twig. I know it's very blue. I'm sorry. But that was a piece of Acropora that was easily 11 or 12 or 13 or 14 inches long. The left end is alive, and the right end was all the undergrowth that had been growing up over the years. And, now it's this giant piece, but, all the lower half is dead. The upper half was alive, but those anemones were getting near them and were going to sting it. So I decided I needed to go ahead and remove some anemones, and as the branches were coming off, I was just like, and trimming off what was dead and reinserting it in the tank. And so that's what happened. And I ended up creating this little hole in the middle of my tank. Now, this is looking at my reef from the front, and you're looking at the side of the bird's nest. The bird's nest is, I don't know. I think it's like 1 foot tall of undergrowth, and then there's life at the top 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. And it's all up at the surface, and you can see on the right side there's some more of that staghorn. You can see all the lower half that's white or dead. You can see the top areas that are greenish. And behind that staghorn, you can see more of those anemones. And so I'm just removing them one by one and getting them out of the tank. So now there's like this gap, and that's all I did with the middle. I just dealt with that, and I did some cleanup on the left side of the tank too. I had some more long branches, even branching rock, like Tonga branch. I had a big piece of that, and I had a big piece of dead but branching Shadowcaster Acropora. It was a staghorn, and that was like doing a thing for aesthetics, and it was covered with anemones. Pulled that out. I pulled out my Lobos that died last year because of a problem with metal in the water. That was covered with anemones. I was just like, So I've just been removing them as much as possible and starting to open up the area. So here you can kind of see a little bit better. I know it's very blue, and I apologize. That was at the time of night when I was working on the tank, and to my eye it was fine, but the phone hates it. And then Terra Reef decided to send me a gift package. So he sent me 9 frags. And I thought, great, where am I going to put these frags? I need to make a hole. And so that motivated me to get into my reef again up to my elbows or further and start removing. And so what he did was he shipped me these overnight. I got 9 different corals. And I wanted to show you just a couple of pictures of how they were packaged because I thought it was pretty nice. Every company has a different approach, and I've gotten corals from Terra Reef in the past. This is John, and this coral right here, I would lean into it's an acan, but he would never say that word. He'd say micromusa. And it was on a frag plug that is pushed into what looks like a little condiment cup that has a hole, cut in the bottom, and he jams it in. And then he puts it inside the bag with the water, and nothing touches the coral because the cup is acting like a sleeve around the edges. And I thought that was pretty smart. He did the same thing with some candy cane. Here you can see the cup a little bit better inside the bag. And then he used a big deli cup for a very large hairy acro that I received. And so here are all the corals in the bucket. They've all been temperature acclimated. His stuff is all super clean and quarantined and bug-free. And so they were just ready to go into my reef. And at that point, I said, well, now I got to move this bucket out of my way now that they're taken care of. And before anything happens to them, I need to get on the ball. So I added water to this bucket. And then after a while, because I was working in the tank for several hours, I took water out of the container and took new water from the sump and put it in to keep the temperature up. I had that bucket you're looking at in this picture sitting on a thick towel on the concrete floor of the fish room so it wouldn't lose the temperature through the bottom of the bucket. But you could feel the water between the sump and the bucket were not always the same. But as long as I kept changing water back and forth, I was able to kind of keep things limping along until I was ready to put them into the tank. Then I decided to start working on the tank itself. And this was a vertical shot, so it's kind of... Let me see if I can make that bigger for you guys. Give me a second here to do some modifications. I'm going to scooch up here. And I'm going to also mention to you you can see, well, I don't know how to show this to you, but there is along the bottom of the sand, that's what I'm just going to emphasize that. The bottom of the sand where it touches the glass, it's all black. That black is essentially bacteria, and specifically probably mostly cyanobacteria, because it's kind of a reddish black. And if you want to clean that out, you totally can. Do not be scared to touch your sand bed. Take yourself some kind of a thin tool like a spatula and just run it between the glass and the sand and just clean out all that crap so it looks nice and clean and white on the side again. Just keep that in mind, because I'm going to show you a picture later where I use the gravel vac, and you're going to say, and I'm going to ask you if you can tell if I did any work in that spot or not, but that's way further in the slides. But in this picture you're looking at, you can see there's a copper band, okay, and you can see Spock. But what you may not have caught initially is that the hammer coral that's always in the middle of what you're looking at, we're looking at the tank from the end, it's up against the front glass. It's actually leaning on the glass because the whole thing, of course, when I started to work in there, just fell apart like they always do. They never just stay in a beautiful shape like you hope, like you can just lift out a basketball and put in a basketball in a new spot. So instead, I had all this undergrowth that had been growing for 5 or 6 years. The stems of the hammer, get longer and longer as they grow, and all that bottom half has to be cut off and lower the coral back down again. And I've done this several times. I've been growing this particular hammer coral I've had for now over 20 years, I think 21 years. So now you can see from the front, the hammer is sitting against the glass, and you can see basically the undergrowth. There's not much life in there, but there was some, and I was pulling those out one by one. I was scraping off anemones off any branches that had any. I was looking for anything that was a problem. I was rescuing the brittle starfish, the baby brittles, and I was removing skeletons. And I found some ridiculously long vermitids. If you look in that bucket right there, you'll see what looks like a long squiggly worm. That is a hard calcified tube. That was about 9 inches long, 8 inches long, I don't know, somewhere in there. And there was multiples of those where this worm made a tube, but the coral got bigger and bigger. And so the tube just got longer and longer to be able to grab a meal out of the water column when the food hit the water. So these things were, and it was nice that they were super long and obvious to see and not just coiled tight and impossible to scrape off of a rock. Not that that matters, because I have tools to chip things off, and that's what I do. But I was working with my work tray on the top. I kept trying to make this picture wider, and I realized that is the photo. That's how close I was to it. So the work tray is an acrylic tray that I sell on my website, and you just use two PVC pipes as rails to just set it on top of your tank and roll it left to right. And if you have a rimless tank, you could notch the front and back of the PVC pipe to rest on top of the rim, and that way the pipe would stay in place and it would not, accidentally roll off or bump off because you've notched it. And if you need help understanding more about that, I can explain it later, but it's not hard. It would just be a one-time DIY for a couple of pieces of PVC pipe, and then you've got these permanent arms that you'll use forever. And the beauty of the work tray is you can go side to side. You can also push it back and forth across the PVC pipe. Just slide it to the back, get out of your way, work in the front of the tank, pull it towards you, cut some coral, scrape things off, glue a frag plug, whatever you got to do right above your reef. And then when you're done, you take the whole assembly away. But it gives you a nice big spot to put all your things down while you're reaching into the tank and moving things. You have a place to put things. So right there was a piece of formerly Duncan coral. That was the coral skeleton, and I was scraping stuff off of it, or I was just getting out of my way. And I also had up there some, I see some kind of a bowl in there, and to hold the anemones. And then I also had some forceps in there too, and some bone cutters and a dental tool. So all the things were right there within reach. And now I've cleaned out almost all of the old hammer out of the way. And I also removed things that were down on the sand bed that were cluttering it up and making it look dirty. And, leaving only behind the real corals I want on the sand. This was an example, and I just took a picture of this for a sense of scale. I wasn't cutting this, but that is the bandsaw that I've been using now. I think I've owned it 8 or 9 years, and fingers crossed, I'm still using the original blade that came with that saw, but I did buy a backup blade about a year ago because I know one day it's just going to snap. But anytime I need to cut corals, I want to use a bandsaw. And so, leave it to me to buy a high-end piece of equipment for something I only use occasionally. But when it's time to do something, I want to use the right tool. I don't want to sit there and struggle with like a hacksaw or something, or just chipping away with a bone cutter and then trying to sand the bottom down or whatever. It's like, no, I'll just buy me a bandsaw. And I bought this one at Macna. A local club member was driving home from Denver, where I bought it, put it in the back of his truck, and then I got it from him later, and I've been using it ever since, and it's super great. I used it when Dwayne was here. I've used it many, many times, but I only use it maybe 2 times a year. And I always keep it clean and, take good care of it. And it's there. But anyway, the thing I'm holding in front of it, that was a huge acan colony, an acan echinata. And that grew from like 2 little mouths or 2 polyps and grew into that massive thing. And then finally, eventually, after all these years, it was completely gone. There was no life left on it. And so I was just removing from the tank, but I just wanted to take a picture of it because when you grow something from nothing and you show it in a hand, it kind of gives you a sense of scale. And I just was trying to emphasize that. And now you can kind of see, now you can definitely see the hammer corals are much lower in the tank than they were before. They've probably come down 6 inches. And then the other pieces that weren't so great, I put them lower in the tank down on the sand and leaned them on the rock and stuff like that. And all the polyps are closed up. But you'll see in a couple more slides when they open up, they actually look better. So here it is from the front of the tank. That last picture was from behind, or from the end of the tank. And you can see all that open area now in the front. And there's a whole bunch of John's corals that he sent me, the 9 frags. There's 5 or 6 in that spot. There's 3 to the right, and there's 1 toward the back. But they all have places to grow, and there's nothing there that's going to sting and kill them, which was important. And then, of course, they'll get placed somewhere better. This is the next day after the water's cleared up, and you can see the hammers look great. Even the ones that are down low, they're all fluffy and opened up again like they're supposed to be because they're not being manhandled. I still have plenty more work to do in the tank, and as you look into the background there behind the hammer, you can see all those damn anemones are just waiting for me to tackle them. The whole middle of the tank is a big project that I do not relish doing, but I've been working from both ends toward the center, so the center is coming up very, very soon. And now, if you look down on the right, underneath that big, tall gorgonian, you can see the sand bed, and there's this little notch right there that isn't reddish. And here's a close-up of it. I had to find the slide. Can you tell what I did there? Can any of you tell? So that was the one spot where I decided to take a gravel vac and try to suck out some detritus. And boy, did I pull out some detritus. I ended up pulling out 10 gallons of very foul water from this spot you're looking at right here, and then the other spot you saw where all those frags were at, in that bottom, like I'd say around the 6:30, 7 o'clock spot, underneath all those clowns, that white area. I vacuumed that little spot. I really would like to vacuum all the end of the tank and really do a deep cleaning on the sand bed that's been running for so many years untouched, now that I've got it opened up. And so that's on my hit list of things to do. That will require me to bring in my big 55-gallon barrel so I can just siphon to my heart's delight and then refill with new salt water like a water change. But for that, at the time being, I was like, I'm just going to do a little bit of cleaning, just pull out a little bit of waste, because why not? I mean, I can see the spot. I'm up here. My arms are wet. I'll just do this. And then this is the way the reef looks today. So if you look to the right, it looks relatively better. It doesn't look nearly as cluttered and messy. The left side's kind of okay, not great. I can see lots of extra anemones up there in the upper left. The middle is just a big black hole. It looks like a portal to another dimension. And the stuff underneath that black spot are struggling to stay alive because of a lack of light, because of that big mass at the top that I mentioned earlier. So going in and removing this big section and opening it up will allow flow to move through the tank, light to pour down, me to plant new corals that I haven't seen in a long, new corals, new to me, which would be really nice, and to go shopping for some new corals, and just kind of get rid of the excess of what I don't need, so it has a nice, clean, refreshed look. And then as we head into the 11th year of this tank in November, it'll look different again. It won't be this, and then over time it'll grow into something large. Now, my method of reef keeping has always been to let the reef grow naturally. I don't like to intercede and make changes all the time. I'm not constantly in there, as you can tell. I'm not in there constantly because things grow out of control. But the thing is, whenever people come over and see the tank in person, no matter what state it's in, other than a brand new reset, they always say, it looks so natural. It's so pretty. I like the lighting. And these are all the kind of things that I like. And so to hear that from them, to get the compliments is nice, because there are a lot of people out there that will set up their tank a certain way, or they're pruning it all the time, and that's their preference. That's what they like to do. But for me, I find that the constant pruning kind of makes it unnatural, makes it more like, you're buying produce at the supermarket. You know how the apples are here and the oranges are here and the bananas are over there. And I just like to see it all kind of growing into its natural forms. And, I guess some people could say, well, that's just lazy, and like letting your garden overgrow. And I kind of understand that, but at the same time, I do have areas of my garden that I let do whatever the hell it wants. I cut the grass, but I don't tackle everything else all the time. And then, once a year I'll go in there and deal with bushes or hedges or trees or whatever, if there's a problem. But I think my yard is kind of similar to my reef in that I let it do what it wants to do, and I enjoy the spectacle of what it becomes until it becomes a giant nightmare, and then I resent and regret it like crazy. And then I just tackle it, and I go on with my life. But Dwayne, on the other hand, who's been on this channel many times, and I talk about him all the time, he would grow these beautiful corals, and this tank would be fantastic, and then he would just start resetting it immediately. And I'm like, what are you doing? Leave it alone. It's so pretty. He's like, no, I got to make space. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to sell these corals. And I was just like, oh, you're killing me. And so there was times where I'd beg him, can't you just give it one more year? Just leave it the way it is. And I think there was a year where he didn't touch it because I asked, and he did like the way it looked. But then later on, he was like, no, I got to do it. I have no choice, Mark. It has to happen. And, I disagreed, of course, and he did what he wanted because it was his tank. But so anyway, I've got a little, very, very short video to show you, but I do want to show you this first. This was the second container of skeletons that I've thrown away. So the first one was like half of a 5-gallon bucket. This bucket is a tropic marin bucket, which I tend to think is like 5.5 to 6 gallons, and it was overflowing and heavy. And I'll tell you this, my trash can smelled so bad. It was because I throw trash in there, and I throw dog poop in there for the trash to take it away. And whatever Jack dumps on the lawn goes in little biodegradable bags and goes into the trash. Then you add reef trash on top. That trash can's going to need a bleach bath. It is bad. I'm surprised neighbors didn't ask me if I'd killed someone. But all right, so here's the super short video. And you can kind of see the tank and what it looks like today. It's all right. It's still got more work to go. And this is just a quick, it's like 10 seconds, guys. This is like a reel, it's like doop, doop, doop. But it just kind of gives you a visual of where things are. If you were to look closely at the top of that bird's nest, it just looks, it's all gross up there. Dinoflagellates are trying to take hold. There's chemical warfare up there. There's pest anemones up there. There's bubble algae. It's all garbage. It all has to go. And I've got some really pretty Montipora up there, huge plates. Oh, I got to trim those. I hate touching those because they're so brittle. But I will be working on that and, changing things. And I might bring this all the way down to a single rose anemone for all those skunk clownfish to live in, because I'm going to get rid of all those other ones that are in there because they do not belong in the tank. And then we'll see how much space I have. So that is where we are on the Reef Reset, which, like I said before, was... it has begun in earnest. So, all right. Now that we've done all that, let me go look at the chat, and we're going to jump into the Q&A section. Let's see if this thing works. It doesn't want to work. All right. We'll have to go find it. Maybe I got rid of it. I did some cleanup in here, and I might have accidentally got rid of a slide that I use. Yeah, I don't see it. Oh my God, did I throw it away? Is it gone? Huh, I have to rebuild that. Boo. That's weird. I don't know how that happened. All right. We're just going to have to rough it today, y'all. Just going to have to rough it. Austin says, I didn't know you were late until you said you were. Yeah, 2:08 is what I shoot for because I'm always scrambling. But I just can't do it at 2 o'clock. There's no way. Yep, Kyle, this is something that I seem to be doing about every 3 to 4 years. Radar, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. I'm going to go spend all of that on some M&Ms. Oh, so this is weird. And I'm just going to... This has nothing to do with reef keeping, but you'd think it would. So I went to Costco about a month ago. I bought 2 pairs of blue jeans. One was light colored, like stonewash, and one was dark blue. And I wore the first pair maybe 10 days. And I had to go to the doctor, as you guys know, for my back. And while I'm sitting there in the chair waiting for the doctor to come in, when you're sitting there just waiting and waiting and waiting, I look down, and both of my thighs on the top of the jeans had a small hole. Like a literal hole, not exactly the same spot, but there was a hole in the fabric. I thought, man, that's so weird. These are new jeans. I mean, come on. What on earth could I possibly have done to put holes in these new jeans? They haven't been through the washing machine yet. So I went to Costco to return them. I said, something defective here. This makes no sense. But the other pair that I hadn't even worn yet, other than just try on, make sure it fit, they were sitting at the house. So the guy says, no problem, and he refunded me. So I put on the other pair of jeans, and I've worn them for a week. And the side of my left thigh has like holes, like an animal just chewed holes through it. And the right side had the inklings of another hole coming to be. Now, this isn't some like weird off-brand thing. This is Wranglers. I've heard of them my whole life. And I'm just like, all right, that's weird. And I think I paid like, I don't know, $25 a piece or something. So I'm taking the other pair back. But I'm just like, neither pair of pants went through a wash machine. I didn't spill chemicals on it. I didn't, like use muriatic acid or something that would explain this. Nothing. I'm just working at my desk or I'm out in the workshop, filling orders or gluing acrylic. And even the acrylic doesn't, none of that touches my legs. I'm standing. It's not like I'm sitting in a chair where it can spill on me. And this was the side of my leg. Again, there's nothing over there to do this. It makes 0 sense. So anyway, last night I was like, well, I'm going to have to take these back too. So I thought, well, I need to get another pair of jeans. So I went up to Target last night, and I'm looking through the wall of choices that they give us in the men's area, and there were some Wranglers. And I was like, I'm a glutton for punishment, but I'm going to try one more pair from a different company, even though they might all come from the same place. And I saved the receipt because we'll see. So stay tuned. I'll give you an update on if the new pair of pants also get holes. I've just heard that there's like disposable clothing being made on this planet that's really, only good for 2 or 3 uses and you're supposed to throw it away. And I saw what looked like a documentary about this topic and how a lot of these clothes that, we would never wear again because now they've got a tiny hole are being shipped to third world countries and they're just mountains of this stuff and they go through it and decide what to do with it or turn it into carpets or something. I don't know. It was just like, I had no idea it was such a big problem, but I think I bought some disposable clothing, I can't, in the past, I'd buy a pair of jeans. They were good for like 3 years unless you got too fat to fit in them, that kind of thing. This is just craziness. Michael says, sorry I'm late, but I'm here. That's okay. And MK says, have you figured out what's growing in your baby fish tank yet? I don't know yet. I was led to believe that I would know what they were by day 40. But then Matt told me, no, you're not going to know till day 60. So basically, October 5th would be 60 days, give or take a day. And so I'm hoping by then I'll know. PK Video Channel says, I hope you're doing fine. What size of a return for a 6? I hope there's more to that sentence. Let's see. Here is another comment from him saying, what size return pump for a 250-ounce display? And what size for the pipe for a bean animal and size for the return? Okay. So you want to do the whole shebang. A 250-gallon tank, I had a 280-gallon tank for 6 years. And that tank had 2 1.5-inch drains, and it had 2 1-inch returns. And I was fine with that, but if you wanted to have the bean animal, you need to have 3 drains. And you'd have to have 2 returns. And I would suggest that, I mean, you can have 1.5-inch drains. That's totally fine, whether on the bottom of the tank or they're on a box hanging off the back of the tank. But then as it enters the sump, you can actually reduce that down from 1.5 to 1 inch just to make the pipe smaller going into the sump. It's going to be more beneficial because the water that's coming down those pipes is filled with air. But as it congeals into a 1-inch pipe and then pours into the sump, it's going to be mostly water and less air. And this works in your favor, and it helps with the noise level too. So I would suggest on your 250 use 3 1.5-inch drains. Set it up with 1 full siphon, 1 with a Durso, and then 1 as an emergency drain that doesn't get used at all. And then your 2 returns can be 1 inch. And then for the return pump, I mean, I like the Vectras. I've been using them for many years. I have 3 of them in operation right now. But if you're wanting to try something different, the Reef Octo Varios, I've heard from my supplier that it's getting a lot of good press. So if you wanted to look into that one, you could look at getting one that's large enough for a 250. I couldn't tell you the model number because I don't know. But for a 250, I would be using the Vectra L2, which is the large. And 2 stands for version 2, which has been out for 5 years. So at this point, it's just the Vectra L. But everyone calls it the L2, so I'm telling you it's the L2. And then the Dry Reef says... Focustronic is the worst. Well, he paid $2 for me to say that, so I've said it, and he says he feels better now. That's hilarious. Andrea's comment is great. She's talking about the box I got from Terra Reef. Plot twist, it's a box of more anemones. That's hilarious. Or maybe she's talking about the box I received in the shipment. Yeah, the Benepets food. I've been using it now for several years, and in my shop, I offer both and Andrea gave you a link to give you all of it, but I sell the powder, which you mix with water, and the pellet food, which there's a reef pellet and there's an LPS feeding pellet. So if you want to feed LPS coral specifically, they have a line of pellets for that, and then they've got the standard ones too. And I would love to sell some. Someone named A Tree says, how many cookies long is your reef? I don't know, because I eat them so darn fast that I never have enough to get the full measurement. But I will try again. Or I'll eat more cookies. Or maybe I'll eat more cookies trying again, and you'll still never get the answer. Okay. Thomas says, I need to do a water change soon. I've not done one since last month. I need to get some testing done on my heart. Jeez. Still don't know what's going on, and I can't get no help from anyone. Well, I'm really sorry to hear that. I still think your aunt and uncle should help you more since they run a fish store, but just do it when you can do it, when you're up for it. I understand, when health is down. I mean, when my back was out, I didn't do anything. I did good to just manage TV, and my dishes piled up, my carpets got filthy, my floors got filthy, everything, my lawn grew, everything around me was a mess. And then when I finally started feeling good again, I vacuumed and I mopped and I swept and I mowed the grass and I did the dishes and I did some laundry, all the things. Josh says you're going to run out of wall space soon. I already have. I didn't hang up the new issue, which is this one here that you guys saw at the beginning of the show. And I've got the picture frame right there in the doorway, right there, right on the edge. You can see that little black line? That's the edge of the picture frame. And it's going to go up there. It's going to be on the next wall over. I'm turning the corner for the next set. And to be honest, I think I could probably put 6 in a row, which would be kind of cool. Even though it's not, 6 in a row is fine. And in a row of how they're being produced is fine too. But this is volume 22.5. The next issue that comes out is the November-December issue. That'll be 22.6. And then we start 23.1. So I'm going to have a 22.5 and a 22.6 on this wall, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 of the next volume. It's one of those little OCD things that might bug someone, but I'll be fine. It won't ruin my life. I refuse to let that drive me crazy. Brad says, would you ever consider making a custom tank like a 30-gallon cube? Yeah, sure. Small things like that, I'm totally into. But when it comes to the larger ones, I get a little dicey. The biggest I've made tank-wise it might be the one I'm working on right now. Let me do the math really quick and double check. It is... No, I mean, it's 100 gallons. So it's not ginormous, but it's pretty big for me. And I usually, if I've made tanks in the past, they tended to be things like frag tanks. But I have made a few display tanks. I've made a couple of all-in-ones. But I tend to make sumps and top-off containers and skimmer stands and all that kind of stuff. Andrea says, welcome to women's jeans. I'm lucky if I get 4 months out of a pair. That makes no sense. Jeans are like this really incredible fabric. I mean, they've been around for 100 years. I almost chose to buy Levi's last night that were twice the price. You know, they were like $30 versus $60. And I thought Levi's will not let me down. But I was just like, I'm going to just see if maybe this version's going to... I'm wearing them right now. So I'm just going to wait and see. I mean, you would think I have sharp barbs coming out of my body at some point, just poking holes into them. I don't understand what's happening. It is super weird. Hey, Cam, how are you? Okay, Michael, I'm going to address this because it's a very valid question or point of topic. He says, my tanks just crossed the 5-year mark, which is actually a very important landmark, just so you know. Some corals are growing like crazy. Others are going downhill. All the fish are healthy. I find it depressing sometimes to see eyesores where something once thrived. So the thing that once thrived that's gone, you need to get it out of the tank. And just remove that eyesore, like you just said. And just enjoy the things that are thriving. And if you want to plant something new in that spot or near that spot or in another spot, just for inspiration or motivation, I don't know. It's just putting in something new is kind of exciting because it's not something you're normally looking at. And so it kind of breathes new life into your aquarium. So yeah, always remove. And if you can remove, anything else that's in the tank doesn't belong. If it's littered down on the sand bed, it could be little bits of coral skeleton. It could be snail shells that are empty that hermit crabs refuse to use. These are just things you just remove and declutter and make your sand nice and pretty again. And get rid of, I think I mentioned this not too long ago, but when you have a really huge coral colony, like my bird's nest that right now it's happening in the tank, you got all of this that's nothing but skeleton. And then you got this much at the top that's alive. Maybe really more like this much. So all this here is a waste of space. And if you just cut that all out and then plant the pretty part down low again, you get to watch it grow upward again. You don't have to spend money. You literally are trimming out the waste and gluing down the bits and baubles, and you get to watch it all over again. And in my case with the bird's nest, I'm not going to keep all that. I mean, there's a lot up there, and there's a lot of BS up there too. I mean, like I said, it's been up to the surface for months, and it was not addressed when I wanted to, when it was just this big, beautiful green blanket of life. And I was like, man, that's 3 feet by 3 feet. That's craziness. And now it's hideousness. And I'm like, oh, God, because I didn't tackle it when I was hoping to. So I would just say, remove what's bad. It will get rid of the depression that's in your mind, and you'll feel a lot better. All right, my screen decided to just move me. Let's do that. That's better. And let's see. Austin says, any tips on getting rid of sand-dwelling dinoflagellates? Of course, I would like to get one but my UV won't touch it. I'm assuming my nitrates bottomed out. My nitrates are 12 and phosphates 0.07. Well, they're not bottomed out. I mean, you just said you've got these numbers, so that's okay. But it probably did come from something. There is a thing that people are using called a UV sandbed sweeper. And it's basically some kind of a 3D printed cage that has a light in there. And people are buying this thing, and they're just going over the top of their sand every single day, and they're just cooking whatever life is on the surface. I never went that route. I think there's other guys that love that idea. Makes me nervous because, first of all, we know UV kills everything indiscriminately. It's going to kill the dinoflagellates for sure. But it's going to kill the good bacteria, just like it kills good and bad bacteria when it goes through a UV light, when it flows through a UV jacket. So the same principle. The other thing is, when are you plugging it in and turning it on versus, getting it down to the bottom of the tank? I've not had to touch one personally, so I don't have the logistical hands-on approach, but I would like to think I'd lower it in the tank till it's right over the spot and then turn it on, even if it's a foot pedal, to trigger it on and off. And that way I'm not risk blinding my fish or something, or hitting anything else with UV before I've gotten down to the sand bed. And maybe that's just common sense, but I know a lot of people are more like, well, let me plug it in. Okay, let me put it in the tank, and a corner of it goes in their corner of their eye, kind of a thing. And you got to be careful with UV. It's dangerous stuff. People have tried. There was this thing that I saw a couple of years ago. It never even occurred to me, and I've never forgotten it ever since because it was so insane. But the guy didn't like that he had Aptasia in his overflow box, and he didn't like that he had Aptasia in his sump, and so he just inserted a raw UV light. I mean, it must have been waterproof, but whatever. He stuck it in the sump, and the entire sump crazed. The acrylics went. it just cooked it, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, what the heck happened?" And he said, "Yeah, I ran a UV down there to kill the Aptasia. They're all gone." I was like, "Yeah, but now you can't see through the walls of your sump because it's filled with cracks." And I was like, "That's not good." So you've got other choices when it comes to getting rid of dinoflagellates. You can stop the flow in the tank. You can scoop it all together into a pile, and you can siphon out that pile. You can add more copepods to the tank to start consuming them. And when you do the copepods, you also want to put in phytoplankton because the phytoplankton is food for the copepods. And the copepods are consuming and destroying the dinos to some degree. So there is that benefit as well. I was fighting dinoflagellates in Caitlin's Reef for about 9 months, and I had a small, appropriately sized UV hanging on the back of the tank, but it just took forever. And the only thing I never did was add the copepods. I was like, oh, I forgot. So I got a hold of Reef Nutrition and said, send me 2 million copepods. And he did not, but he did send me a bunch, and I stuck them in there. And within a matter of a few weeks, they were gone. So, I mean, copepods are a very important part of removing those things from the aquarium. Richard says, I'm looking for a lid for a 24-gallon all-in-one. Any suggestions? If it was just a solid, clear lid, I could even do that. If I had the exact dimension you needed, like if it's a curved front, I need to know I need a tracing, basically, that I can mimic. But there are companies in the industry like clear lids, and I think one's called Kraken? No, is that right? Is that wrong? There's a couple out there that actually make like polycarbonate lids with screens in them, so you still have airflow through it, and it lets CO2 out and oxygen in, and it keeps its shape and looks good. But just a flat, solid lid. If it's just clear polycarbonate, yeah, that's something that anyone can do. If you were to use acrylic, it would bow, and I wouldn't recommend that. So I don't know if that really answers your question, and then whoever makes your all-in-one tank might actually offer a lid, so you could check with them as well. All right, well, that's all of our questions. And we've only talked for 53 minutes. It feels like a whole hour to me. I'm bummed out that my Q&A slide disappeared because I liked it. It took me a while to build that thing last time, and I didn't save it as a backup, so that's a bummer. Oh, well. All right, well, I'm just going to jump to the next thing, assuming that exists, and I didn't delete it, too. Let's see if this is here. It's all gone. All my stuff is gone. Where did it all go? That's super weird. I feel like they just got hidden somewhere. Because I don't remember hitting delete, but I must have got rid of our ending too. That's no good. Yeah, it's all gone. All right, well, let me do this. And just remind you that today is Water Test Saturday. We're not going to have our nice ending slide because I apparently borked it. But I do want to remind you that it is important to test your water every single week and know where your parameters are, because by doing so, you can make small corrections now before the livestock is adversely affected. And if you aren't doing your water tests weekly, you're actually cheating your reefing experience, and you're making your life harder. It sounds easier. The whole lazy aspect is great. But on the other end of it, is that when you have to finally deal with the problem, it's so much exponentially harder to resolve because you let it go for so long. Just like me letting my tank overgrow and become a thing. Now it's a giant battle instead of just being me trimming a few things down. Michael says, would it be safe to put European style, I'm assuming you're talking about the Euro bracing, around my 250 gallon that's 30 inches deep and does not have two braces in the middle? I don't know how you're going to connect that, Michael, but having so you're saying, is your 250 gallon rimless? It has no Euro bracing, it has no inner bracing. Planet Aquarium calls it a splash guard, but it's a structural thing that helps keep the tank in one piece. So, if I'm understanding your question correctly, it's not just something you can just add. I mean, it's something that gets glued into the aquarium to hold it together. Larry asks, are you coming out to Aquashella in Los Angeles? I don't have plans to do that. This trip to Las Vegas is probably my last reefing trip for the year. And Emmanuel says, hello. And Kumar says, am I late? Yes, you are so late. Aquaball says, I changed my water last night and I cleaned the pumps. Oh, you're making us all look bad. But that's good. That's also a reminder we need to be doing these kind of things. I got to go through and clean my tanks one after another. Everything needs cleaning. They all need some kind of TLC. It just never ends. The whole multiple tank syndrome is just a nightmare. Nope, Kumar, no answers yet. No new challenges. Just feeding them baby brine every single day. A lot of them are swimming at the bottom of the tank now. There's a whole group of them down there. Let's see. You can see right there's a whole bunch right there. So their glass is dirty. I need to clean that tank too. You'll have to watch the playback. You'll see the new light that I got for this tank. It's a whole story. All right, guys. I'm going to end it here. I got to get some work done today and, looking forward to the show next weekend. So if you're able to come to Reef Stock in Las Vegas, I'll see you guys there. Bye, guys.